How's everyone doing? I know it's getting kind of late in the afternoon. Do we need to like get up and stretch or anything? I heard a yes. How about this? I'll try and go really fast. What I'm going to talk about today I think is exciting. It's exciting for me anyway. The last presentation was very exciting though, so it'll be hard to beat. I'm going to be talking today about renovation innovation. And I first want to just explain what my company does. The name of my company is Continuum, and we are an innovation design consulting firm. And what that means is that we help design innovation practice within companies, within organizations, and for organizations. The company is about 30 years old, and we have a strong basis in design and human-centered design, and putting people at the center of product and service systems. So a lot of branded experiences keep us busy around the world. And probably like a lot of maybe your organizations or a lot of other innovative companies that you've worked with, ours is comprised of a lot of different types of disciplines. We really believe in that sort of cross-disciplinary fusion that happens that is necessary for any creative endeavor. But we have a lot of, obviously, different flavors of design. I come from a product design background, industrial design and design research. But we have a lot of other people who specialize in things like microfluidics, for example, or anthropology, or the design of robotics, and very technical things, and also very kind of human-centered things. And about a third of our company is really focused on the design of businesses. So a lot of the work that we do actually is in the service of creating a whole new business. What I'm going to talk about today deals directly with hospitality and F&B specifically within hospitality. And I'll get to that in a second. The bulk of our work kind of looks like this. We have offices in 6 different markets around the world, but most of our work happens out in the real world. We're always trying to understand what people are doing, what they're thinking, what they value, because that's sort of the seed of any great experience, is understanding at a values level what people are motivated by. And if you can understand at a values level what people kind of want and aspire for, you can design future experiences that they'll be able to grow into. You know, you'll have some level of confidence that you're going to design an experience that maybe not be fully future-proof, but at least is something that will evolve and be able to grow with someone. So this is what a lot of our work looks like, and I could talk about that part all day. This is just a very brief kind of snapshot of some of the work that we have done, just to kind of show a little bit of breadth. Financial services is an area that we've been doing quite a lot of work in Europe. A lot of, you see some products up here. The Reebok pump is a product that Continuum invented back in the 90s. I don't know if maybe some of you have heard of it, if you're from the West. But this was a product that was invented because in the early days, Continuum did a lot of medical device design and development. And at this point in the 90s, Reebok was suffering in the market badly because of Nike, who had just introduced something called Nike Air, which is kind of an amazing brand concept. And because we had a lot of sort of blood pressure cuffs sitting around the office, we decided to try putting one in a high-top sneaker, which was really originally intended to kind of create the benefit of performance enhancement. And based on our research, what we found was that it was actually better at injury prevention. The mental part of playing basketball, at least at that time, revolved very heavily around Michael Jordan, who was very well known for dunking. And a lot of young, aspiring basketball players at the time were trying to dunk like Michael Jordan and injuring their ankles after trying and failing. And we found that in doing the kind of the research on the street with basketball players in South Boston, we realized that a shoe like this, which could inflate around your ankle, gave someone the sort of emotional confidence and the mental confidence to try and dunk and actually not injure themselves. So the power of thinking you can do something was aided by this product, and it went on to become a $1 billion business. That was a very big lesson for us as a company in terms of understanding how to take something that was completely emotional and building it into a product and using that as an attribute for the product, and then ultimately the product brand that became Reebok Pump. KFC, we did a lot of early sort of retail dining concept work for KFC in China. This was also in the kind of early to mid 90s. So we've been working in mainland China for quite a while. On the bottom right, you see an example from Herman Miller, which is a contract furniture manufacturer. We helped Herman Miller break into a new business, which was healthcare, using their core competency around production of hardware, but in a completely new environment. And so we spent a lot of time understanding what was unique about hospital environments and building a whole sort of introductory range of products that would help them launch in that sector. The P&G Swiffer is a category that we created years ago, which also some of you may have heard about if you're familiar with Procter & Gamble. The Swiffer is a floor cleaning product that also became a $1 billion business. It was a category creation at a time when P&G was really struggling in their floor care business, which was primarily a soap, liquid soaps. So we created a tool. And that was an example for us, again, and a lesson that we carried with us around sometimes the solution to the business problem is very different than what the business does currently, which is chemicals. And then the one on the bottom left is my favorite because I spent a lot of years working on this, nappies or diapers. This is also something I could talk about for days, but I won't. I'll spare you. Diapers are a fascinating topic because technically they've been innovated to death. There's not a lot you can do with a disposable diaper right now. In terms of the traditional, let's say, product criteria, containment. But there's a whole lot you can do on, again, the emotional side of that, using that product to deliver something that is very meaningful to people, which is the healthy development of their baby, and understanding how the design physically, graphically, experientially of a product as simple and as kind of prosaic as a diaper can actually dramatically change and profoundly change the way that parents think about raising children. Anyway, this is just kind of a brief background on some of the work that we have done. But what I want to really talk about is service design and how a lot of that work has sort of transitioned into the way that we and a lot of our partner organizations, our clients, think about the design of services. This is a kind of a boring diagram of one way you could describe service design. On the left, you have the kind of the front of the house, and in the back you have, or on the right, you have the back of the house. And in the middle, you've got all these sort of places where the experience crosses, and there's these different sort of touch points that cross front of house and back of house. This is not really how we think about service design, but this is one way of describing it. This is another way of describing it. It's also sort of a boring diagram. Can you guys hear that? Okay. It's like being on a conference call and you hear static, but no one else can hear it. The interesting thing about this diagram, and the thing that I want to talk about, is the staff. That's where the kind of front of house, back of house experience really lives and dies. And the reason that service design is so important, not only now globally, but also to our company, is because we have been making the shift over time from our founding of being a product design company primarily to being a service design company. And putting people at the center of any kind of business challenge is what service design is all about. And in fact, the way that we think about what we do is designing human systems. I mean, any kind of service is a human affair. So that's what I really want to kind of discuss in a little more depth. And I'm going to do that by talking about one case study, and this is Holiday Inn Express. And I just wanted to ask very briefly if anyone has stayed in a Holiday Inn Express. Just raise your hand. I think, wow. So 4 people in this room have stayed in a Holiday Inn Express. Holiday Inn, so I'll explain Holiday Inn Express to you. Holiday Inn Express is a brand that lives under the IHG umbrella, and we've done a lot of work for IHG over the years for their different properties or different brands. But Holiday Inn Express is it's, I don't want to say down market, but it's not a 5-star hotel. Okay, this is a hotel that caters primarily to business travelers. In the core markets, they're usually located in sort of second-tier cities. That's kind of the core. You can find Holiday Inn Expresses everywhere, but this is kind of the core of who they are. And to give you a little bit of context of what we did with them, it's important to know a couple facts. So at the time, this is around 2009, 2010, there were 1,200 Holiday Inns globally. And at that time, they were planning 800 more. And in hospitality, that's a lot of hotels. Every year, about 120 million people. And this is something that they told us, which is that every 3 seconds, somebody's checking into a Holiday Inn. Now, Holiday Inn was going through a kind of like a really big brand relaunch at this time. It was a $1 billion brand relaunch, and this is the largest of its kind at the time. And this is sort of the problem that was described. In Holiday Inns and Holiday Inn Expresses, there's a restaurant, and the restaurants were not winning. They were not doing very well. About 2/3 of their guests were turning to outside food and beverage, like Starbucks, McDonald's. And the thing that really bothered the folks at Holiday Inn was that a lot of times people were leaving the hotel and going down the street to the gas station to buy a Pepsi and a snack, or some Twizzlers, or some candy or something. So they were losing customers to the gas station down the street. And in the hotel business, I'm sure some of you are in, if not many of you are in the hospitality industry. In the hotel business, this kind of mentality of like heads in beds and room nights is really the engine of the whole model. So getting people into the hotel room is how the whole kind of thing works. Holiday Inn was not taking that same approach and being as aggressive in that for their F&B. And that was the kind of the big umbrella challenge that we started this with. How do we fix the F&B within these different properties? Because it was doing so poorly, it was affecting their franchise deals, and their franchisee ROI was suffering. So it was harder for them to do deals. It was harder for them to develop new properties. It was making that 800 pipeline much harder. They were getting a lot of pressure from outside brands, even upstart brands, and in different markets, especially in Asia, I mean, that was happening like crazy. And they knew that any sort of incremental improvements were not going to be enough. They had to really rethink, kind of holistically rethink how they were going to do this across the system. So when we got together, the first thing that we all decided as a team, as a core team, was that innovation would have to be really completely guest-centered, 100% guest-centered. And I don't think even we realized how important that was at the time. And our business is human-centered design. So putting the customer in the center is what we do, but it was a gargantuan undertaking. So it really relied on experiences, environment, and operations. Now, interestingly, increasing staff headcount was not an option. So in whatever the solution was going to be, we could not add staff. That was something that was a sort of cardinal rule in the beginning of this. So we knew that the actual experience in the environment and the hardware, if you will, had to do a lot of the work of improving that experience. Okay? So we applied a methodology that we use very often, but we tailored it for Holiday Inn. And we got a multidisciplinary group of people from our side and a multidisciplinary group from their side. And we set about trying to really further refine the segmentation of who's actually coming in and eating, who's coming in and not eating, who's not coming in at all, who's thinking about coming in but then choosing somewhere else. So we went through this kind of exhaustive exercise. We arrived at some guest archetypes, and I won't, just for time, I won't sort of go into all of them, but I think probably you all get the idea. And we developed some sort of core guiding principles that were going to essentially be the lighthouse for how we were going to define the new experience. And this is what you see at the top. So it's eat, drink, have fun, relax, connect, and transition. And that may not sound mind-blowing, and it's not. But the way in which we put it together, I think, is the really important and key thing. And I should stop here and say that, you know, a lot of the buzz and innovation is around really sexy stuff. It's around doing things that people have never heard of, new to the world things, inventing businesses and inventing ways of doing things. And we do that. We work for companies, big and small, at different stages of maturity. We work for governments. We innovate for nonprofits. We do a lot of this. But the thing that really interests the people at Continuum are the problems that are really not super sexy. They can be very kind of prosaic and kind of everyday. But if you can solve those challenges, the unsexy ones, but the ones that really affect a lot of people, the ones that can change the quality of someone's life, or the quality, in this case, of someone's travel experience or dining experience, we take a lot of pride in that. And so a lot of the work that we tend to focus on is kind of the invisible stuff. It's the stuff that happens behind the scenes. And we find that type of innovation work really compelling. So this is kind of a story of that. It's about 1 million small things done right that add up to a net benefit that is better than anything that could have been imagined before. So the guiding principles and the archetypes, we spent a lot of time doing stuff that looks like this. So this is kind of the journey map that we developed. Journey mapping is a really old tool. I'm sure many of you use it. But at the time, this was new for Holiday Inn. So they never sort of mapped the journey of a guest into the hotel from the beginning all the way to the end. And we define the beginning and the end very differently than Holiday Inn. The beginning of the journey starts at home, and it ends at home. And for the hotel, the journey starts when you walk in the door, and it ends when you walk out the door. So just that sort of calibration was really important. And we spent a lot of time traveling with guests, like going to their homes, flying with them to their destination, checking in, going through the whole thing at the property, having that experience or a set of experiences, checking out with them, flying back home, debriefing. So the process was really involved, but we learned a ton about what people kind of expect at these different points in the journey. And there's pain points everywhere. You know, for anyone who's stayed in any kind of hotel of any class in any market, you know that there's a lot of seams in the experience. It's not super smooth. Even if you're at the top tier, there's still things that probably could be better. Here, the journey was really a way to kind of show what some of the larger, more tactical things that we could solve were. So this journey map is gigantic. It covers a lot of stuff, and we use it as a way to kind of like prioritize what we want to focus on. And from there, we built the service blueprint. And what we mean by service blueprint is, this is just like one little excerpt of what is a gigantic service blueprint. And there's a lot of layers for what kind of, where in the experience you're delivering and what departments are involved and et cetera. The service blueprint is, you see the bubbles. That's a guest need. So that's what someone in the hotel needs. And then the diamond shape is kind of like the steps they have to take to solve the need. And then the heart is kind of like the solution or the output or the end state, okay? So at a very, very high level, the goal is to sort of collapse the bubble and the heart to be as close together as possible. You don't want to have so many diamonds in the middle. And some of these diamonds are things that I, as a guest, have to do. And some of them are beyond my control. I have to rely on a service member to do them. So you can imagine this service blueprint is like really, really big. There's just so many different types of interactions that you can have. But again, as a tool, this is how we begin to make trade-offs within and among all those millions of different things that we were trying to incrementally improve. This was one very simple example I'm just going to show you. And I'm going to play you a video that will kind of paraphrase a lot of the solution at the end of this. But this was called the 24/7 cafe. So this was this is a really, really simple answer to the problem of people leaving the hotel to go down the street to the gas station to buy a Snickers bar or whatever. We'll just put a 24-hour self-service, essentially exploded vending machine downstairs. And that in itself is not really mind-blowing either, but I think the way in which we connect it back to the guiding principles, so everything is kind of on brand, and it's within the experiential guidelines. And for our target guests, how each of them is going to use this differently, because they all use this differently. It's not one, there's not one prescriptive way of doing it. A vending machine has one prescriptive way of doing this. Here you've got a variety of different options for you. And then this is also, from the tool perspective, something that we tend to do a lot. And people, when we do this in Asia, everyone thinks we're crazy. But in North America and Europe, we spend a lot of time prototyping. And we prototype all kinds of stuff. In this case, you can imagine if you're designing a product, let's say a kitchen appliance, you would prototype that kitchen appliance in full scale out of foam or some material that could sort of replicate what it might look like. If you're doing an appearance model, if you're doing an actual functional model, you actually build it so that it worked. For the hotel, we decided to just build the whole lobby of the hotel. And rather than build a real hotel or take a real existing lobby and sort of refashion it, we wanted to make it out of cardboard. We wanted to do it out of a material that we could easily tear down and build back up and move things around. And we did this for a couple of reasons. The point of having a prototype is so you can let someone else come in and experience it and then evaluate it for you. And then you can kind of tweak it, and you can do that again. So we built this full-scale prototype, and we had executives from Holiday Inn come in. We had real off-the-street guests come in. We had total strangers. We had our own company people do it. And we learned a lot of really amazing things, one of which was, in the beginning, we thought, well, it would be really great if, and at the time, there was this big debate around, should we have a kiosk to check people in, or do people want to go to the counter and actually check in with a human? And a lot of the brands in this segment were experimenting with these kiosks. And we thought, wouldn't it be great if we just kind of took that one step further and said, like, instead of a kiosk, what if there was no check-in? Like, what if you just went straight to your room and somehow it happened on the way? And then we realized technologically we couldn't do that across a system of 1,200, soon to be 2,000 properties. So we thought, well, maybe we should do the check-in process in a really superhuman way, and you sit down, and you're not face-to-face, but you're side-by-side, and you're sitting on comfortable furniture. Maybe some of you have been to hotels that do that. And we tested it. We tested lots of different ways. And one of the ways that we found was not going to work was we had guests come in with their bags, sit down, and then we had a service staff come over with an iPad and kind of stand there and check them in. And because this is a prototype, we got feedback right away that people are like, well, it's really weird if I'm sitting down and they're standing up, and it's really weird if I'm sitting down and they're sitting down, and we're not really looking at each other, but we're supposed to be comfortable. Really awkward. we thought it was a great idea, but we wouldn't have known it was a really bad idea unless we tested it, which we did. So we did this like over and over and over again. And I'm going to just quickly play a 1-minute video which explains the solution to the problem. But first, let me frame the problem. The F&B itself, the restaurant, was not working. And after about a year of work, trying to understand what about it wasn't working, we realized actually the restaurant, it's not that the restaurant's not working. The whole lobby is not working. It's actually the whole front of the hotel that's not working. And we decided that the number one insight that was going to drive the solution to this whole problem around F&B was that eating is a social experience. Eating, dining, they're social. The social part of it is what needs to drive the physical design of the restaurant. And social means not a lot of barrier. Let's break down all the barriers. So effectively, what we decided to do was, let's just remove the restaurant completely. Let's make the lobby the restaurant, and let's make the restaurant the lobby. So we sort of fused the two by literally removing the wall between them. And so when you walk into the Holiday Inn, you see nice casual places to sit down. You see tables and desks and warm lighting. And you see, most importantly, people engaging with each other. They're having a social interaction. It can be the road warrior who's there meeting colleagues before they leave to go to their meeting, having a quick coffee, going over the PowerPoint. It can be families deciding to regroup at a certain specified time in a certain specified place within that. But the point is that the whole experience of sort of eating and being in a lobby, which a lot of times is not really used for anything, became suddenly meaningful. And so the social aspect of it really drove the design. If you could play the video right now, it'll explain a little bit more of the solution. And I apologize, this is sort of more of a promotional video, but it seemed appropriate to explain.
Welcome to the Social Hub, one cohesive space that gives guests flexible options so they can eat, relax, connect, or just have a little fun without leaving the hotel. A familiar look and feel, reminiscent of home, helps our guests let their guard down so they can truly be themselves. Since their guests are social, the overall design encourages them to connect with others within the space or virtually with free Wi-Fi. Guests also have more ways to get their favorite foods when and where they want, like a 24/7 market with snacks and sundries available at any time, or the to-go cafe with quick and easy breakfast options when they're in a hurry or just want something light. Careful attention was paid to how the space transitions from day to night. In the morning, the bar is hidden from view and the chef station becomes a focal point. At night, the space transforms into a vibrant bar and restaurant. The full bar is unveiled and the chef station is hidden by panels that double as a large screen TV. The flexibility of the space is prevalent throughout, from seating options to choices of things to do. Eating and drinking, relaxing, and having fun are all part of what makes the Social Hub unique.
So because we couldn't add people to the solution, we knew that, again, the hardware was going to do a lot of the work of providing the social experience. But we knew we weren't going to be able to like completely transform the space. So a lot of the things that you saw in there, a lot of the physical attributes were trying to use elements that could shapeshift to cover the different day parts. So for breakfast, it looks like a breakfast bar. For lunch, it becomes more of a bistro. And for the evening, it becomes more of a bar. So this is purely done with very, very simple old-fashioned techniques using lighting, some shifting panels, great merchandising rules of thumb. But all of that sort of worked together holistically to be able to provide this experience that really spanned these different day parts, didn't add any additional staff, and it actually made people a lot more comfortable. So all the money went into the actual layout of the space and the programming of the space to be something that is not just a lobby and not just a restaurant. So this, and this is the last part here, the design of this may not be something that really compels you, but I can assure you that in reality, if you walk into the space, it is a dramatic improvement from what it used to be. And in that invisible way that great design can be, it actually did encourage people to interact more. Food sales per available room were up 20%. This is on launch. Beverage sales up 50%. The 24/7 sales were up 75%. We were comparing that to vending. And this is really interesting. In December of 2011, when the year that this launched, so this is the first kind of holiday season of that year, F&B revenue was up almost 250% from the same period earlier. So if you can post those kinds of numbers, it's pretty astounding. So for Holiday Inn, the decision was they're going to start to roll this out across all 1,500 or 2,000 properties, I think by 2015. So they're in process of doing that. It started in North America, moved to Europe, Middle East, and now Asia. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Can I take any questions from the floor? Sorry, I can't necessarily see you if your hand's up. Shout at me if you do. Anything? Okay, I have a question for you then, if that's all right. You talked about the end-to-end customer journey, and the focus of this was F&B, clearly. But what was the biggest, as yet untapped opportunity in that customer journey that you maybe didn't work on but could work on in the future?
It's interesting. There's a second case which I didn't show just for time, but it was the in-room dining.
Okay.
So the biggest untapped for us, again, in this tier, was in-room dining. So a lot of people who are choosing not to go to the restaurant, it's not because they're leaving the hotel and going somewhere else. They're doing it in their rooms, or they're thinking about doing it in their rooms and then not. Mm-hmm. And so we then looked at that next. Although we did that for Crown Plaza, which is a different brand, but the whole in-room experience could actually be a much, much better experience from the standpoint of, like our previous speaker, from a sensory standpoint. You can actually control more of that experience in-room. The solution that we provided there was something that actually helped the service staff deliver and prepare. And it was kind of this bento concept that unfolded in the room. And that also got produced and is working great.
It is one of the most awkward interactions, right? Somebody knocks on your door with a tray in their hand. You try and keep the door open with your foot. Something then happens, and you try and let people in, and they put the thing. It's ridiculous, right? It's crazy.
Awful, and it's a vestige, like so much in the hospitality industry. It's sort of a vestige of an earlier time.
Right.
You know, the fact that you have to sign for your meal after you've called them to bring it, it's like, why? You know, there's no real reason you need to do that. It's just formality for formality's sake.
Legacy. Sorry, there's a question here.
Hello.
Hi.
You talked about all the testing that you did around the check-in experience, but then looking at it, it looked like it was relatively normal, as in someone standing behind a desk. Was it improved or changed beyond the standard? Or were they both standing up, or were they sitting, or what did you end up with?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. We as the creative team really wanted there to be a better solution than the desk. And so we tried a lot of different ways to do it. And it turns out that the desk is probably the best way. Not necessarily from the standpoint of the guest experience. Certainly that could be better. I mean, and there's there's plenty of examples out in the world where that's being kind of experimented and innovated. But from the provision of service standpoint, the desk is actually the best, or not the desk, but the kind of a central, point where you're face-to-face is actually probably the best kind of architectural way to do it. The big thing for us is that we think modally, like what are people trying to do? Like what are they trying to accomplish? And hotels think zonally. So it's like, well, over there's the concierge, and over there's check-in, and over there's the restaurant. And like, guests don't care about the zones, They don't, like, nobody wants to care where stuff is. Except if you're traveling to a new place and you go to a new city and you're going to a hotel, the check-in desk is the thing that you know how to do, And if you ladder up the kind of the let's say like the gold standard for a hotel experience is like fluency. Like I just want to get to this new place and feel like I know how things work. And so the check-in desk is one of those things where we debated endlessly, but in the end it's like, well, yeah, let's improve the experience at the check-in desk, but let's not try and innovate the check-in desk, if that makes sense.
I think it's a really important point. I think not just with the check-in lobby experience, but with anything, right? Innovating in a space means that you have to alter people's mental models of how you get stuff done. And we're so used to things being a certain way that you break that mental model and people don't know where to go and do. So then it becomes a question of how do you then guide them and navigate them to that new way of doing things, which is a challenge but a good one to have, I think.
Yeah, I mean, another example that I'd love to talk about, because back then, you know, it was like a really big surprise to the GMs of the hotels that like, we would say like, well, what's the first thing that your guest wants to do when they enter the hotel? And they would say, well, they want to check in. It's like, no, that's not actually like the first thing someone wants to do when they get to the hotel is like drop their stuff and check their email. Everybody knows that. That's what everybody does. And so back in 2009 or in 2010, you know, you'd have to go through like 4 or 5 hoops to get to the point where you could drop your stuff and check your email. And we were at the Intercontinental in London, Park Lane. They had just gone through this massive sort of like renovation, and they had spent a lot of money printing the leather-bound folios that they put on the desks. So when you get to your room, it has like, you know, everything that you need to know about the hotel. And we were like, you don't need that. You know, like that's not helping anyone. That's just the thing that when someone is trying to check their email, they like shove off the desk. And so it was kind of like that zonal modal thinking, you know, it's like, well, but there's a space on the desk for the folio, like that's where it goes. It's like, yeah, that's not really. So just the whole sort of unwinding of that mentality was really what this project was about. And then there was subsequent work we did for years and years on lots of other different parts of the house. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of conventions in hotels that like kind of sort of still make sense, but the experience that gets delivered over them has to radically transform. And in some cases, it's the opposite. You know, it's just a matter of figuring out which is which.
Yeah, I think the folio on the desk is one thing that gets knocked over, and the other is cushions, where everyone does that and drops on the floor.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions in? No more questions? I just had a sign that says time up, so
yes.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Sure.
I appreciate your time.